We wouldn't be anywhere if we didn't put in giant letters, DeepSeek.
DeepSeek. That is okay. Okay. Well, that was my first topic. All right.
Well,
So
I mean, we're on the same page because you can't lob a nuclear bomb into the middle of
no,
a
you really
conversation and
can't.
not hurt anything.
All right. Well, now that we're already there, I guess for me, coming from like the people who just kind of have heard of it, know that it kind of crashed the tech or the market, all these different things. Can you explain to us in general terms, either A or let's start with one, what is DeepSeek? Like how did it come to form? And then B, why does it matter not only to finance but AI, but also to just like people in general?
So what is DeepSeek? And I mean, let's break it up a little bit. DeepSeek is a company,
Yes.
it's a Chinese company. They've been working in the technology space for a long time, but they deal largely with abstract concepts. They're actually doing Bitcoin mining for a while. I mean, stuff like that.
Weren't we all
So,
though?
so it's like, let's do Bitcoin mining, which, Bitcoin mining in general and the blockchain as a kind of a rule uses pretty big math, factoring
Right.
giant primes, things like that. Like that's a pretty challenging space, which is why we were using so many GPUs up until AI showed up to mine Bitcoin. You'd have these giant data centers in the middle and like have their own microclimate desert because they're just pumping out so much heat. Because you mine a Bitcoin, it's worth $100,000, so it's
Yep.
US dollars. So that's a pretty big
Well,
deal.
now
So
they are.
they're working in that space, but in a very genius way. I mean, math is math.
Math
We
is
all know that. Just if you got two rocks on Earth and you take two rocks to Mars, it's still two rocks. It doesn't become magically three rocks. So it's so math is math, and they realized pretty quick that using some of the math concepts they were coming up with would be beneficial in the language model space, in the AI space. And China traditionally over the last several years has been kind of strangled a little bit with the advanced chip technology that we have the luxury of having here in the United States. They don't get as much because we're controlling a lot of those exports. There's a lot of reasons for that we don't have to get into unless you really want to dive into some ridiculous politics. But that put the DeepSeek organization in China in a position where they didn't have a lot of resources. They couldn't just call up someone and ask for $50 billion. Now, I'm sure there's this group of people who are saying, oh, well, it's the CCP and the Chinese government. They could have had infinite money. And I mean, we're not going to talk, we can talk about that. We're not going to argue about any of that right now. The reality is they didn't have the level of resources that we had in the United States. So they were kind of forced to, quote, MacGyver their way through the standard mathematical processes that take place behind most AI models right now. And in doing so, they used a bunch of technology and ideas that other people had used, from reinforcement learning that is used relatively commonly to, Bayesian field theory, which is used in a lot of the spaces around the connections and weights within language models themselves, or even in AI models and deep learning, like we've talked about in the past. They used all these things and kind of shuffled together in a unique way because they didn't have the resources to really kind of cram down the cost of training a model and the cost of inferring, getting answers from that model. And then said, oh, hey, we've got this, it's available. And its performance numbers were relatively close to some of the big frontier models, ChatGPT and Claude, in those from both Anthropic and OpenAI relatively. So that was really surprising to the industry. And then they said, oh, here, we got an app. And the app immediately becomes the number one downloaded app on the App Store because it's cheap. And then they say, oh, well, we're going to do this for 100th or even 1,000th of the cost of what OpenAI is doing. We use less chips, we use less core, we da 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 da. This goes on. So that threw some waves, but the real waves came when the actual paper came out, when DeepSeek came out with a research paper, an academic research paper that said, this is how we did this. And they open sourced all of that information. Everybody could have it. We could have it. Anybody else who's working in AI could have it. Any research scientist for free without having to pay for all of this. So you have now a DeepSeek model, that is available on Hugging Face, that's available on most of the model depots that are running around out there that you can download yourself. You can put it on your machine and you can train it. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to run on your phone. Have researchers done that? Absolutely. Have I done that? I managed to get the DeepSeek model on the phone. But that's not the convenient way to do it. You start
Right.
asking it inference questions and your phone heats up and everything sits there and nothing else works because you're using all of the resources. But just being able to get it to operate on your device or on a laptop or even on a desktop is already orders of magnitude easier than getting it to operate on giant, server stacks like we have with all of the inference training equipment associated with it. So that is a coup. That is a giant change in the industry to show that a smaller, more efficient, more well-designed model can compete with these larger scale, frontier level organizational enterprise models and be almost as good.
Right.
And the real strength of that is that now we've got the jillions of open source tinkerers and engineers and project leaders who are looking at it saying, well, can we make our project better with this? Can we improve what we're doing? Can we train a better model that we're working on? And it kind of takes the teeth out of some of the big frontier models arguments in that, oh, we need trillions of dollars to be able to do this research. Well, realistically, this group of Chinese scientists working at DeepSeek put together this package for 5, 6, $7 million. I think it's 5.6 is the currently understood number, but that's who knows what it actually is. 5, 6, $7 million versus the billions of dollars it has taken to train some of these other models. So that opened up the realm of conversation around this. So if you're a user, you can just download the DeepSeek app and just use it. Now, is China going to be collecting that data? Well, of course they are. Just like OpenAI is collecting your data if you're using ChatGPT. Or you could, if you're a researcher, or even a moderately skilled developer, you're just starting out, you're just playing around with code and you want to play with it, you can download those models and you can put it on your machine and you can see how it works. And that open source piece is really the nuclear bomb that's been lobbed into everything. This is a way to make a model smaller, more efficient, more capable, using less compute and train it over more time than the tens of billions of dollars it has taken to train some of the frontier models up to this point. So you've really got two pieces. You've got the model, the open source piece that's really valuable to a lot of different researchers, and you've got a tool, in the DeepSeek API and AI that can be used for inference as a wholesale product that is significantly cheaper than what OpenAI or Anthropic are offering right now, Microsoft or Google for that matter, which you could then build into your tools, which obviously opens the door to who do I want to give my data to?
Right.
Give it to OpenAI, give it to China, and what's going to happen? And half the world's on TikTok anyway, so maybe they're giving it to China already.
Yeah. Something I wanted to touch on just a little bit is you mentioned you could get it to run on your phone and that was difficult.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to have you maybe draw the distinction between having the app on your phone that actually runs through the cloud as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to having an AI model run solely directly on your phone.
That's a great point because that's a pretty powerful distinction. Right now, if you download the ChatGPT app or you download Copilot for Microsoft, or even if you use it on your desktop, your phone, wherever you're using it, when you put that query in, when you put that prompt in, that is being sucked up and pushed into the cloud, where these giant inference machines that have tens of thousands of GPUs are handling that for all the people that are asking those questions. Even when you use DeepSeek, the app, it's the same thing. It's being pushed to whoever's holding it, which I think is Tencent right now, who's hosting DeepSeek in China. So it's going to those servers, and then the inference is being done, and then a response is being pushed back to you. So all the work is being done off your device, except delivering like the little window that you're typing into and talking to. Hosting a model locally, either on your phone or on your desktop or your laptop, or even a little machine that you have, like a PC, a gaming rig, or something like that. You can unplug the internet cord, and it will be able to do that inference right there without talking to anything in the cloud. That local hosting has always been several orders of magnitude less performance, capability, and intelligence than the big cloud hosting. But as a really good point that you just made, this system, the algorithms and the various methods that DeepSeek is using to design and train better models, narrows that gap substantially. So you can host a model locally that doesn't talk to the internet, which is fantastic for 100 different off-the-cuff possibilities. Rural anything. Rural medicine, rural farming, rural health, rural construction, shipborne, anything that's on a boat. If you're in the
Right.
middle of the
Yeah.
ocean, good luck getting internet. So
Yeah.
I mean, if you've got a model that's trained and you have the data that the model can then reference, and the data for most really important things doesn't take up a lot of space. We could take all of the sum of agricultural knowledge that we have, and it'd probably be 20 terabytes,
Oh wow.
including pictures and things like that.
Hmm.
It's not a lot. And I'm saying probably because somebody at some point in the comments is going to come back and be like, "Hey, we've done this work and we looked at it. It's 5,000 petabytes," and I'm going to be
Yeah.
like, "Eat my
University
hat."
of Illinois did this in 2002.
Right, exactly. Which is fine. That's I mean, that's what I want. Tell us that.
Yeah,
Tell me,
yeah.
tell me the answer because I'm a scientist. I'm
We
curious. I
definitely want to
want to
see
know.
that data as well.
Yeah, you got it. I'll take a look at it. But the assumption is that we could take this data and then that would be everything, and then store that in some hard drives and put it on this boat or in this truck in this remote place with the inference engine in a small place that could then access all of that data, and you'd have a functioning AI that wouldn't need to speak to the cloud and you could use in that space. So this is a really big step toward getting those things mobile and functional. And I mean, not to mention the military.
Oh
You know,
wow,
it
yeah.
if you're in a space where your signal's being jammed or you're not able to communicate or you don't have internet access and you've got an AI that can actually reference points. One of the projects that we're working on internally, which we would love, if anybody out there is interested, we would love to work with, is using AI and medicine together for combat medical scenarios. So that how often do you run into a combat situation where you're not able to administer a treatment because of X variable? Well, if we can answer those questions, then medics can operate more efficiently in that given environment. But right now, we can't get that. The gear would take up a truck,
Right.
but with DeepSeek, we're able to start shrinking some of these things down. And I mean, it's a breakthrough. It's a really significant change in the science because somebody was forced to do it and not told that they couldn't. So that's a good question.
Right. It's almost like if you're kind of bringing back to your military analogy, it's like people talk about like force multipliers, right? And
Yeah.
so having a compact AI that can run locally in like for the medic example becomes now we have a force multiplier for our medics,
Yep.
but now we also have a force multiplier for our civilians as well, for like seafaring people or agriculture
Hmm.
people. The amount of people that have been in a bad situation in the ocean that maybe if they just knew some information, like they have an engine go bad, it could really help those people.
Yeah, and that's to me and to a lot of the other researchers that are working in space, and especially at Clarify, that's solving a problem that's real.
Yeah.
That presents an actual challenge that can cost life or save life or make significant change. Is you're in a space where, oh shit, we blew all these bearings in this motor and our engineer has no idea how to MacGyver this. Well, if somebody has ever done it and you have the sum total of all information right there on a drive, I don't know how long it would take you to search through it, but a decent inference model could search through that in a few seconds,
Right.
and then come
Right.
back and be like, hey, if you use this bearing over here, it also fits in this same spot, and you'll be able to limp your way home instead of being stuck in the middle of the ocean. Like that's pretty significant. And it's not, are there a jillion cases where stuff like that happens? Probably not. But if you're the one on the damn boat, it's a pretty important
Yeah,
case.
just make sure that drive does not get wet. Keep your
Put it in a
Ziploc bags
Ziploc bag.
handy. Yeah.